Welcome back. It's Lionel, tech lead and partner at Westfall. And today I'm talking about, are PHP salaries lower in the industry? Are they less well paid than all the other languages out there? And you may have seen online on this channel as well, a lot of people expressing their concern that PHP developers get paid less than everybody else in the industry. And they often quote lots of statistics from Stack Overflow that PHP is about 20%, the median PHP income is 20% less than some of the other languages out there, in fact JavaScript or Python or Ruby on Rails. Now, before you jump up and down about this, I know there are a lot of people, especially entry-level people, who watch my channel and go like, whoa, PHP, what's going on, right? Why? Now, first, let me break down some of the statistics for you so that you have a good understanding. One major point, right, is that the base of PHP developers is far wider than the other languages. For example, if you were talking about the highest paid, right, Java and SQL will fit right on the top. Why? It's not because they are higher paid. There are just as many in the group for PHP. It is the companies that hire them, the smaller group of them, are mainly enterprise companies and they pay more. Now, it's not to say that PHP doesn't have enterprise companies, but there's a far wider range of common users. Now, this would be something similar to saying that people who, like a Toyota, costs less than a Tesla. Therefore, you should sell more Teslas. The answer is that there's a smaller group of people that buy Teslas, and Toyota is a much wider used car. It's not that it's a bad car, it's much wider used, and also used from entry to beginners to more advanced big enterprise businesses. Now, this is the second point I want to make, right, is that you see a lot of the work being done, especially if you're talking about Java or you're talking about SQL, right? These are just usually big enterprise who have complex needs, who need that kind of specific specialization. Most PHP developers, I think the majority, 70% of them, are actually working around the CMS ecosystems. I'm talking about WordPress and Drupal. So that doesn't mean that these guys are more highly or lowly paid. The amount of work that they do is probably much less because the frameworks already, the CMS already offer most of those features. So they're usually doing some maintenance work, they're doing some patch work, okay? So these are some of the differences between the two languages in terms of pay. That being said, right, if you strip out, I've done some numbers on this, PHP is on average still about 8% less pay than those big other languages. Now, you might say to me, why? This is a bad thing if I'm a developer. I would reverse that and say, no, it's actually a good thing for a few things. Number one, the amount of work, as I said, Toyotas are more widespread. They're still more used up. So you're gonna have more options available for you, okay? The second thing about it, right, is that there will be more adoption and more continual maintenance going forward because these guys are creating that code and then you're working with them. So that's an important distinction of PHP. Also, another factor is that PHP is an older language. So remember, there are cycles in the business. When a certain language comes into demand, right, a lot of people pile into it and then the price comes down. It's simple supply and demand. You're seeing that across things like cybersecurity now, which is really up there, and that's going to come right down because actually there's not much programming in cybersecurity. The main thing is that the development business goes through these cyclical demands where a certain technology spikes up, Tabula, blah blah blah, whatever, SQL, and then people start training into the skill set, go into that area and bring it down. These are certainly some of the big markets out there. Now, when it comes to the biggest pay levels, right? Some of these surveys are skewed because they are done in the US. I'm not in the US. in the United States of America, right, they pay one of the highest amounts of salaries in the world because they're skewed by big tech. They're skewed by all these big Silicon Valley companies that are paying very massive amounts of salary. There are a couple of caveats to that. One, the taxes in the US are extremely high, okay? Extremely. So you could be paying up to upwards of 45 to 50% of your salary going to pay taxes. And then the standard of living is very high. You have to pay, I heard, close to $3,800 US for a place to live in the valley. So even though they're earning more on a graph on the scale, they're actually taking home less. Outside the rest of the world, there's a few things. One, companies don't pay massive amounts of salary for developers, regardless of whatever. You can go around and pitch, R or something like that. They're not going to give you $300,000, $400,000 because they're not making that kind of money. The second thing about it is that usually taxes are much lower around the world, somewhere. Maybe if you're doing it in Finland, it's going to be a bit high, but out here in Singapore, much lower tax rate, definitely than Silicon Valley. So these numbers are being skewed. PHP is much bigger and much wider adopted outside the United States. That's why it's so big. In the United States, as I said, they're powered by Google, and these guys are pushing whatever tech they are, you make about this is, even though some of the data shows it's below, you can get increases in the pay when you do these languages. It comes down to marketing and educating people about the value. At the end of the day, when you boil down languages and boil down everything, right, it's what the software does that gets the money, not what it is. So remember that fact, right? When you talk to your product manager, to your CEO, talk about that. I'm the tech lead, that's the bottom line, because the tech lead said